Before we get into our message, I wanted to invite our Mayor Jim Gomez, to come up here. He has some words that he'd like to share with us this morning, so let's welcome out Mayor Jim Gomez.
Good morning. Today we gathered together as a community of people here in La Habra and the entire nation to remember the tragic events of September 11th. And this morning we had a service at 7 a.m. and had about 100 people showed up, and that was shown on KTLA. But I'm here today because the President has declared today a National Day of Service. And I'm truly impressed by the service that this church has offered, particularly after the tragic events of September 11th. Calvary Chapel La Habra was among the first church groups to go out there and offer hope, healing, and restoration to the police officers, the firefighters, and the many workers that were there on the tragic days following 9/11. They offered care packages and really offering the message, the good news of Jesus Christ during a tragic time in our nation's days. But what I'm more impressed with is not only what they did the days following 9/11, but what this church does day in and day out. Each and every one of us come across a time when we're going to have a tragedy happen, a death in the family, a spouse gets sick, somebody loses a job, and continually Calvary Chapel La Habra steps up to offer hope, healing, and restoration. Our motto here in La Habra is a caring community, and day in and day out, Calvary Chapel La Habra offers the good news of Jesus Christ and offers that love of Christ to the community of La Habra. And I want to just offer this proclamation. It has a lot of whereases and where-tos, and I got about 8 of them here, so anything after 3 is really good. So I just like to read this where it says, "Now let it be proclaimed that the city of La Habra proudly commends Calvary Chapel La Habra for their vital role in the recovery effort in the city of New York, and is proud and honored to have the congregation embody the motto of a caring community. So therefore, let it be proclaimed that we are congratulating you and thank you for all that you do for the city of La Habra and really across the world in your efforts."
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. I really do. Very powerful. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. This is yours. Okay? I was sitting down in the first service and just reflecting upon the opportunities God gave us, and God just began to show me remind me of so many conversations and so many opportunities. Gave not only my wife and myself, but many in this church. And I really didn't know if I could get up and speak. I was so overwhelmed by the peace of God and the opportunity of God, the presence of God, the Spirit of God. And then I began to just, think again of this is our opportunity as a church to come together and to find some understanding and to come to that common place of the common hope that we have in Jesus Christ. And so that's what this day is about. And that's why we just wanted to set this time aside as a memorial. And that's why we have a memorial set up with all of the pictures and the different items from our trips back there in the foyer. Because we really wanted God to capitalize on this and soften our hearts and open our hearts and then do something with our hearts today. And so that's what we've been praying for, and it really hit me in the first service that God is just so good. And so I'm privileged to be able to stand here and share about God in the midst of a crisis. Most of us remember quite vividly, do we not, the events that transpired 10 years ago now on 9/11. We remember when we first heard the phone call, or maybe someone at work, or maybe someone in your house when they first said, hey, a plane, a large plane, we believe, has just hit a tower, one of the towers at the World Trade Center. We would soon find out that it would be a large plane, American Airlines Flight 11, that would hit that North Tower. For many of us, we remember watching live on television, 15 minutes after that first plane hit the North Tower, the second plane would bank in and hit that second tower, the South Tower, United Flight 175. And to our horror, to our disbelief, we were trying to understand and grasp just what was happening. All of a sudden, every bridge in New York City, every tunnel, all of the trains through all of the subways were absolutely closed. No vehicles were allowed off. No vehicles were allowed into that area. I remember vividly seeing tens of thousands of people walking across bridges such as the Brooklyn Bridge, walking away from New York in their business attire and having this stunned look on their face and having the billows of smoke from the city behind them going, what is happening? I remember our Federal Aviation Administrator grounding all domestic flights. We remember the White House being evacuated. The Pentagon would soon be evacuated. Our President Bush, would be at an elementary school. We all remember his aide leaning over and that look on his face and the following comments from our President as he would say, it's perceived that we have just been attacked, and it's a terrorist attack. We all remember that. 40 minutes after the second plane hit that South Tower, American Flight 77 would crash into the Pentagon, and the whole southwest side would eventually collapse. And we would see those people running from the Pentagon and to see all of the rescue efforts pouring in the triage sections and the fire. And we watched all of that. And for most of us, we found ourselves watching in disbelief as that South Tower collapsed, knowing that there were all of these people going up to save lives, knowing in our minds that there were tens of thousands of people that work in those towers. We're like, you've got to be kidding me. That South Tower just fell. Then 23 minutes later, the North Tower would fall. The financial trade center for 150 nations just folded and fell to the ground. It was completely destroyed. The Manhattan skyline was irrevocably changed. And lower Manhattan was under a cloud of dust and smoke and terror. In the hours and days that follow, we would learn that this was a terrorist attack by Al-Qaeda and its now deceased leader, bin Laden. We would learn that this would become the worst attack on American soil in all of America's history. If you had young children today that are in their early teens, I was thinking about this the other day. We were talking about those that are 13 in junior high now and 14. They were 3 and 4 years old when this happened. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this today. That's why we wanted to set up a 9/11 memorial in the foyer as well. Yes, to honor and to educate, but to remind us. To remind us, church, that we are not in control. To remind us how important it is to turn to God and to pray to Him. Today we want to remember. We want to pay our respects to the nearly 3,000 people that lost their lives on 9/11. Innocent victims from over 90 different countries. From the youngest, a little 2-year-old Christy Hansen, to the oldest, 85-year-old Robert Grant Norton. From the first victim that we all saw carried away, Michael Judge, that priest sitting on a chair, to the last a few months later. We want to remember and we want to lift up the family members again on this day of all of the victims that have been left behind, all the widows who lost their their spouse, all the parents who lost a child or a grandchild that day, the 3,251 children who lost a parent on that day, all the friends and all the colleagues who instantly lost a treasured relationship. We also want to remember and honor all of those who responded to the 9/11 attacks that day, from our military abroad for our safety, to all of the firefighters who were on the scene instantly, and the Transit Authority and the NYPD and all the search and rescue workers that poured in the following days, and the military that brought protection around that federal crime scene known as Ground Zero, and all of those wonderful iron workers who worked 24 hours around the clock endlessly in those first couple of weeks trying to recover life. And we also want to remember the clergy, the chaplains, the pastors, the priests, the churches that sent their Christian firefighters and their Christian police officers and retired Christian military personnel into that scene to stand in the most horrific, dark spot in this incredible dark place and love on those people that were going through so much. National catastrophes such as September 11th leave us asking why. For 10 years now, many of you and many people across this land and throughout the world have looked up, if you will, to the sky and asked God, why? Why would God allow this? I'm not sure we'll ever get the answers to those kind of questions down here on earth. At least an answer that would settle our hearts. But I do know that the answers that we will see to questions such as why to an event like this up in heaven, those answers will make sense. And from an eternal perspective, oh man, our whole life down here is going to look absolutely different. And to all of those people that I talked with in the following year, the many times we went back to Ground Zero and Lower Manhattan and the fire stations and the police stations and did outreaches in the parks. And to all of those who came up and said, why or how could a loving God allow this?